So I am going to start now.
I just started.
Where's Maureen?
So thank you all for coming. According to Zoom, we have 48 devices tuned in, several with more than one person. We have a wide variety of people here. I just want to say a few words that my mother, Barbara, had, I think of as 3 careers. She started out in the New York City Ballet when that company was first formed. She danced for Balanchine, and also in Jerome Robbins' company, Ballet USA. Her second career was raising 3 children, and after the first few years, it was on her own. And her third career, she went back to college, got a PhD in English, and taught for several years at City College after a few years before that, bouncing around adjunct positions and such, and retired as, I believe, a full professor from City College. Also, we're having this memorial over Zoom, obviously because of COVID-19, we can't have a gathering like this in person, and people might be curious, she did not die of COVID-19. Although Alex and Sam and I tried to talk her out of it, she insisted on living on her own in the same apartment where she's been since 1979. For most of the last year, we did hire a health aide to help take care of her, but she was mostly independent and she was not in a group living situation where she would have been especially vulnerable to COVID-19. She did have a stroke, I believe it was May 21st, and died about a week and a half after that on May 31st. And I think we have people here representing all 3 of those careers, and maybe I'll even learn something. There might be a 4th career someone wants to bring up. And I would like to give people a chance to say whatever they want. I think it'll be easiest for us to manage if you can type it into the group chat, and we'll try to take people in the order in which they say they'd like to say something, except that I'm going to preempt everything by starting. I would like to read a passage from Paradise Lost. This is something that my mother read frequently, especially in her later years. And it's from book 3, starting at about line 40. It's where Milton, excuse me, I always choke up a little bit at this. It's where Milton talks about his own blindness. Thus with the year, I'm getting an echo in here. Thus with the year, seasons return, but not to me returns day, where the sweet approach of even or morn, where sight of vernal bloom or summer's rose, or flocks or herds, or human face divine. But cloud instead, and ever-during dark surrounds me, from the cheerful ways of men cut off, and for the book of knowledge fair, presented with universal blank, of nature's works to me expunged and raised, and wisdom at one entrance quite shut out. So much the rather thou, celestial light, shine inward, and the mind through all her powers irradiate. There plant eyes, all mist from thence purge and disperse, that I may see and tell of things invisible to mortal sight. And during the last week and a half after her stroke, I read that to her frequently.
Lori is next.
Okay, Lori, go ahead.
Okay, I'm having a little trouble with my audio, so can you hear me? Okay.
It's very, it's fuzzy, staticky.
Yeah, the audio. I wonder if you all could maybe mute yourself. It might help my microphone. Yes? Is that possible?
Each host has muted all participants. You muted Lori as well.
I didn't. Everybody.
Are we the host? We're not the
Lori,
host.
can you unmute yourself? I think everyone has been muted.
Let's see how it goes. How's that? Is that better?
We
Yes?
can hear you.
We can hear you.
Because David just offered me his laptop if need be. So I'm just going to read what I've written. Before I begin, I just like to mention that Alex, Benji, and Sam's devotion to Barbara, especially in the last year of her life and the complete support they gave her in those last most difficult 2 weeks when they were constantly at her side. Really speaks volumes. Okay, so I have 8 kind of points. It's long, but it's loving. My introduction to Barbara. She was sitting on the 17th floor of the English department lounge of the Grad Center with her Gigunda Hershey bar with almonds. I did a double take and stared at her. She replied without being asked, well, you know, it's my dinner after all. I guess she was used to quick energy shots. At home at East 96th Street. I remember the kids at the table, the warmth of her kitchen, her amazingly delicious cooking, especially the fried chicken and potatoes, her fabulous cowboy coffee in a big pot with the grounds, and then a little bit more refined in a Turkish pot. Sometimes the kids would horn in our studies together. Sam, at age 6 or 7-ish, I don't remember which, on hearing us talk about Play-Doh, said, "Play-Doh? I know all about Play-Doh." Okay. Stories of Barbara with my kiddies. Elisa, as a very young child, my daughter Elisa was scared to death when she saw me lighting a candle, a yardstick candle for my mom. Barbara acknowledged that yes, death sometimes scares people. But by the time she was old enough to worry about dying, they'll invent a cure for it. So you really don't have to worry about anything, Elisa. Later on, all grown up, Elisa played Cecily in The Importance of Being Earnest in high school. Barbara listened and told me she'd seen the birth of a genius of comic timing in Elisa's first performance before a live audience, the spark that existed between audience and character and actor. Elisa got it. Concerning her auntie Barbara, Elisa says, I just have always appreciated Barbara's sweetness and welcoming presence. I always felt welcome and held around her. And I think the massages you referred to are part of that too. She knew how to have fun and how to make each day of life feel extremely special. I still have a jacket she bought for me for my 16th birthday. It was utterly gorgeous, timeless, and will never go out of style, just like Auntie B. David, a fond memory when I was a boy, she pushed me aside to protect me from a stinging jellyfish. She took the hit herself. More later in David's closing words about Barbara and the sea. Barbara's ballet stories. As we all know, Barbara had innumerable stories about her time with the New York City Ballet and later with Jerry Robbins' company. They were laughing out loud stories about the crazy stuff that went on backstage and sometimes even on stage. She was always thrilled when many years later, evil Annie Inglis invited everyone out to her beach house in the summer, and she promptly hung her beach dune photo, which we've seen, in her bedroom right next to her photo of Mr. V, whose funny Russian accent she delighted in imitating. 2 other stories, but my favorite story from her many European travels is when she went to Crete. She was a lover of geology and particularly of rocks and collected them all along her trip. As she climbed a mountain in Crete, she started singing, "One of these things is not like the other." And 100 yards further, she stopped and asked herself, she's singing that song. Well, she had a memory of orange particles sticking out among the sandy rock walls. And when she went back down to find the orange, they turned out to be Minoan artifacts. She threw them into her suitcase, and when she got to customs, the officer asked her, "What do you got in here, Lady Rocks?" And Barbara answered, yeah, I love rocks. And the guard waved her on. Second story, I think about our trip out to Harvard when Benji invited us to hear Marjorie Garber's Shakespeare lecture, driving up from New York City by 10 a.m. It's a 4-hour drive, as you probably know. I had been teaching a late class the night before. We were running late, but since I was tired, I asked her to take the wheel for a bit while I snoozed in the back. When I woke in the car, I saw she was driving 85 miles per hour. And by gum, we got to Cambridge right on time. And she said, don't worry, I know exactly where to look for Benji. And there he was, sitting right up in the front row, pen in hand, ready to take notes. The trip prefigured our membership in the Columbia Shakespeare Seminar, where Barbara always listened attentively and asked the speakers stimulating and interesting questions. Examples of how Barbara's mind works, studying for oral exams. Some of us who took orals at the Graduate Center had a method for getting to know the numberless facts and works of our major and 2 minor fields. We made up her study schedule by draping the works across the number of days available. Barbara loved this mapping out, but with her hugely spatial imagination, she took it one step further and hung densely glossed index cards of every single subject on every single doorpost, liminal space, and nook and cranny. Thus, she got to move about in her knowledge, terpsichore and mnemosyne hand in hand. A second instance of the way Barbara's mind works. Reading all of Dickens' Bleak House, 980 pages long, aloud as part of Barbara's book club group. I was a member of her reading group, which met at our house for a good number of years for read-alouds and commentary. I sent Sam 2 typical snapshots of Barbara's Norton edition of Bleak House with her amazing marginalia. I guess that didn't quite get into the slideshow, but on the back of her Ticketron stub for Les Mis, she had all kinds of wonderful bookmarks that she created out of available paper. In '92, she had bookmarked with her special note on Esther Summerson. Irving Howe said, very simply, she's a damaged child. And for those of you who have trouble with Esther Summerson, as many of us do, yeah, that explains a lot. Concerning Crook's rag and bottle warehouse, she likens Crook with his scrolling inventories to Melville's Bartleby the Scrivener and to Joyce's Farrington from his Dubliner story counterparts. Pages upon pages are exclaimed upon with her delight in Dickens' wildly comedic passages, typical of the notes in all of Barbara's books, except for her numberless murder mysteries. Those are just for pleasure. Art and music. We've all gotten Barbara's cards, haven't we, right? Mm-hmm. Her unerringly aesthetic and beautiful eye and eyes. Can you hear me? Is this going all right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we hear you.
Okay, but more than that, okay. Her enormous musicality, her complete acumen and facility on the piano. He told me not only did she turn the pages for Stravinsky, but it actually played the piano with him. I had to see that. But also her generosity inviting me to so many ballets at the New York State Theater and concerts at the Philharmonic, at the Metropolitan Museum, at the chorales at that sweet little church uptown on the west side. I think it was St. Anne's. And our special love of Bach, especially the double violin concerto and the late Beethoven quartets, or our many meetings with Kathleen McCann and Grace Brophy at the Met, and later on for September birthday catch-ups. Barbara would also invite me to special gatherings, and oh, what an unimaginable thrill with the distinguished dances of the New York City Ballet. I also got to know Vita Brown, Alistair Macaulay, and in our last such foray together, we went to see Jacques D'Amboise' work with the Harlem National Dance Institute. She would share with special triumph every chapter she completed from On Balanchine's Company. I think she also, Mindy Aloff was also one of the readers over her shoulder. I also had the delight of sharing new portions of her chapters on Wallace Stevens' The Intensivist Rendezvous and Barbara's book on Noble Numbers, Subtle Words. We laughingly contrasted our writing styles. Barbara goes at it with pruning shears, while Laurie takes out her broad axe. I've become much more of a pruning shear variety as I've aged. Barbara as nature lover, eternal geology student, and lover of the sea and oceans. As we all knew, Barbara was a lover of nature. She always recalled the summer she'd spent with the kids in Kennebunkport. There's a whole humongous glass jar of seashells she bequeathed to David. And there's that line of Stephen's idea of order at Key West. She sang beyond the genius of the sea. I've always thought of Barbara there. She loved Central Park and all its glory. She could recognize and name all kinds of trees. She loved the great beech tree at 90th Street and Fifth Avenue. Just after Barbara's death, Sam's lovely wife, Janelle, and I took a kind of walk of homage to the conservatory gardens. I told Janelle how Barbara and I would always traipse up to the gardens in early spring when the lilacs were blooming. We'd always walk up to the north garden with its 3 dancers, and then to the south with this amazing pond and bird bath fountain on the shoulder of one of the 2 child statues who bathed in this pond. She told me the story of a tree near that pond that had been blasted by lightning, but whose secondary branch bent upwards anyway and grew back with amazing greenery in a few years. There's still so much that I haven't touched upon, but when I talked to my son David last week, he had this to say about her, with which my stories end. Barbara's got this gift for immediately connecting with other people and making it known that she's really interested and valued people she encountered on the street or in her friendships. For example, when we were there in the conservatory gardens, we met a lady who was handing out sanitary wipes for homeless people. And Barbara asked her, would you share your name with me once more? She really wanted to get to know this lady. David also reminded me that she frequently told him, I really love you, you know that. Writing for this afternoon of remembrance, David said, both through her words and the feelings that she shared, Barbara is the most extraordinary person I've ever known. At my first experience with the ocean as a child, I was there with Barbara, and she soothed my fear of the waves with an expression that I can never forget. Soon the waves will be flat, just like pancakes. And it gave her so much delight that I remembered these things. And I think now we are giving her so much delight that we are remembering these things.
Thank you, Laurie.
Thank you, Laurie. That was beautiful.
Yes, thank you. Linda,
Ellen.
can you unmute yourself?
Ellen, would you like to go next?
Linda was the next one to
ask. This will be very short. Thank you. I just had a tremendous need to say a few words because Barbara meant so much to me. I met her in the period when she was looking for work and after she got her PhD. And I was in awe of somebody who had been a ballet dancer, a premier ballet dancer as she had, and made this switch. And the fact that she was able to hold out and get herself a position as a professor at City University. But you didn't speak of it, Benji, as another career, but I think her writing was really another career because far more than is required just to be an academic, she produced masterful works. And I had the pleasure of discussing them with her and watching it. And she, in the numerology, she was consulting you, apparently. She said, oh, my math genius son. And I felt that I knew all 3 children, Alex, Benji, and Sam, well, even though I met you just really in passing. But she was very kind, and one of the, as you all know, and one of the things she did for me, I finally got a PhD after years of floundering, and the ceremony was nothing because it was a rainstorm and they had it outdoors at Columbia. They didn't even bother to put it inside, and it was a total mess. But Barbara, I had the real ceremony because the day before, the dean of the School of Arts and Sciences had put on a little ceremony for us. And Barbara had schlepped her way all the way across town and up to Columbia to be there for me because my husband, Tom Dardis, could not attend because he was teaching. And I was, oh, that's something else that Barbara loved, cats. Anyway, so I lost touch with her because I moved to Pennsylvania in a senior home, and I was in the hospital shortly before I moved, so I really was not in a position to say goodbye to anyone. But but I did talk to her a few times on the phone, and anyway, she just was so comforting to me in so many critical times and so encouraging. And also her ability to pick herself up and keep going and realize that she was going to win out. And that and her devotion to her children was it was a real light to me in my life. And I'm so glad that I had the privilege of knowing her. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. I just want to say that perhaps even more than me, the one who helped her with the Noble Numbers book was one of my college friends, Joshua Burton, who's on the call with us now.
Right.
And who's going to go next? Linda. Linda, you're still muted.
Everyone has to unmute themselves. It's a security thing.
Linda, I think I see your lips moving, but you're still muted.
She's trying to unmute.
She's trying to unmute it right now.
There, okay.
There we
Is
go.
that good?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Ken and Linda, Klein, Janelle's mommy and daddy. Nice to see you. And we didn't really know Barbara. We met her once when we were in New York 3 years ago. We had the delightful opportunity to go out to dinner with her and the family, or lunch, okay. And got to talk to her, and I had lots of questions about the ballet because that was always fascinating to me, and it was wonderful to meet somebody who actually was a professional ballerina. And she gave us a book, and wonderful book, and signed it for us. And so we're just happy to be part of this, and we offer our condolences for the loss of so many of you. And we're just happy to hear all these stories because we get to know her now, and that's great. And so thank you for this.
And I'd just like to say that we had only met Barbara for a very, very brief time. And again, it was, she had invited us to get together for lunch in New York when we were out there visiting for the first time. And probably we were together for maybe an hour or so at the very most. But she made an impression upon me that I think would be a lasting impression, because she was such a gracious woman, you know, and so pleasant to talk to. And then when you thought about her life, how she had been in the New York Ballet and done such wonderful things in that, and then after that had ended, she went on to get a PhD in English, I believe, and then go ahead and teach. I mean, she just was really quite a remarkable woman, and she's kind of like a person you can say, well, she did it all. She, at the end of life, you know, you look back and you say that she really ran a good race, and that's very true. And so I'm glad that I did meet Barbara, and she did most definitely made a very lasting impression upon me. And I'm sorry for her loss. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ken
Linda.
and Linda.
Can I say something? Hello?
Okay.
Are we out there now?
Hi. I think Karen is the next one on the list.
Hey, I'm Karen. I live down in Atlanta now, but I was living in New York for about 20 years. And I met Barbara in about 2002. And she was a part of my life in a very difficult time of my life. And she was like, I hope Benji and Alex and Sam won't be offended when I say she was like a second mom to me. She really was. She was. She was. You know, my mother could give certain things to me, but Barbara was someone who understood art. She understood writing. She understood music, And so I could relate to her in a way that I couldn't relate to anybody else. But I had a couple of stories about her. First of all, I just never forget coming to have dinner, and we would go through, I don't know the whole prayer, but Baruch Atah Adonai, and she'd go through to the end and she'd go, rub-a-dub-dub, thanks for the grub, and she asked me at one point, is there anything of mine that you would like to have? And I said, I'd like to have the 2 mugs that we used to drink coffee from all the time. And I received them from you guys. And that moved me so much. 2 more stories, quick. I called her one day, I was in a panic because I had been sitting in my little apartment, my dark little railroad apartment on East 90th Street on my couch, which was broken. And so my butt was scraping the floor. And I'm sitting there, and I called her up and I said, Barbara, I've just spent 6 hours playing solitaire and watching PBS. And she just started laughing, because I was in a panic. It was so terrible that I wasted this time. She said, you want to know what I'm doing? I've got a stack of blue books over on the desk that I'm supposed to be grading. And I'm in bed reading a murder mystery. She just was, and I just need to also add, in the midst of all of this very, very exalted stuff that was a part of her life, that she's the one who, when we went hiking by Bear Mountain, taught me how to pee in the woods.
Nice.
She was very proud that she was the one that taught me how to do that. So
downhill.
Downhill, exactly. And how, I won't go into details, but anyway, you know what I'm talking about. Sam, Benji, I've met Alex, but I just feel like I know the 3 of you so well, and through her stories, and my heart goes out to you.
Thank you.
Loved that woman. Thank you for letting me be part of this.
Thank you. And also because of her experience touring Europe, she knew how to ask for a bathroom in a civilized location, even if she didn't speak the language.
Thank you, Karen.
Thanks, Alex.
And Joshua, I think you said you'd like to say something?
If I could. So I first met Barbara, or Mrs. Fisher, as I called her, stubbornly for the first, it must have been at least 12 or 15 years that I knew her. Probably in 1982 or 83. It's possible Benji remembers the exact date. I don't. But it was a habit of mine when I came for vacation from college in Boston to fly out of New York rather than Boston, just so that I could make a stop, because there were people to see, there were things to see. Coming into Manhattan was always a pleasure. And one time that I was briefly in Manhattan, Benji invited me over to the house for dinner, and I met his mother. And those of you who know us in our sort of gentle middle age have to realize that we were college kids, and very, very full of half-informed ideas and relatively short on social graces. And the conversation in the at the dinner table was just a nonstop effusion of the sort of thing that you'd expect to get out of our mouths. And Benji's mother couldn't have said more than 50 words in the entire time that I was in the house. I walked out hardly having gotten to know my hostess, but I was at least brought up with the rudimentary sort of a sense that I needed to send a note. And I got back an extraordinary letter that just it marked the beginning of a correspondence that I treasured over the 30-some years that followed. The visits that I paid, and from that day on, I don't think I ever came into Manhattan without coming up to the far Upper East Side and stopping in to at least see Barbara. But the visits in person just punctuated a correspondence that was literary and witty and real and concerned and wide-ranging. And well, I'll just say that I don't think at that age that I ever sort of went in to dominate a conversation with the expectation of being taken seriously by my elders in the way that I was taken seriously by Benji's mom. And whatever I was interested in, she sort of made an effort to become interested in, or at least to sort of have thoughtful commentary about. And gradually, as I became mature enough to listen rather than just to talk, our correspondence grew into something more like an actual conversation. And I came to understand what wonderful, deep well springs of knowledge of human nature and knowledge of the world her sort of indulgence of my arrogance was coming from, and how much I had gained by sort of meeting somebody who listened first but had so much to say herself.
Thank you. Who's next? Alex, you wanted to say something.
Yes, thank you. Hello, I'm Alex. For anyone who doesn't know, Barbara's eldest child, the first, the only girl. I'm special. And I wrote some stuff down, and then of course after I wrote it down, I remembered other things. But can you all hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Yes. My computer crashed before, so now I'm on my phone, which is why I'm like all over the place.
Alex, can you hold it steady?
I'm holding it as steady as I can. It's a tiny little phone.
That's fine. That's fine.
So I wrote that my very earliest memory of my mom is of her pushing me in a swing. I remember being very happy. I still love to swing to this day, and my partner is going to build me a swing. Very excited about that. I remember that when I was 3, she zipped me up into my little snowsuit and took me to Central Park after a big snowstorm, and the snow was up to my chest. And for years, I thought that it must have been, 4 feet deep. And years later, I realized how small I must have been and that it really wasn't that much snow for grown-ups. For my 4th birthday, she made me a pink birthday cake with little ballerinas stuck on top. I know that she loved to cook, but I don't think she was a natural at it. She really liked recipes. And I forgot to mention the fried chicken that Lori mentioned, but yes, she was really good at fried chicken. Of course, now I'm vegan, so I don't miss that. But her collection of her own recipes is full of borrowed recipes, which she followed assiduously. Arroz con pollo and picadillo from Rosa Sanchez, my best friend's mom. Creme caramel au reversé and pot de crème au chocolat, probably from the Times. And even one for Turkish coffee, including the required incantation and the number of times to tap the pot with a spoon. I'm pretty sure her favorite recipe was for pineapple upside down cake, which she brought to every potluck. I think she baked her last one just a couple of years ago. And she was also a lover of spicy food, especially vindaloo. And it turns out that I'm the only spice wimp in the entire family. One of my best memories was when she would put on records for me to dance to when I was about 3, 4 years old. She always encouraged me to move however I wanted. After my mom and dad went to see Chubby Checker at the Peppermint Lounge, and Jerry Robbins incorporated it into the performance of the White House, not the Chubby Checker performance, but the twist, she taught it to me. She instilled her love of music and dance in me, never imposing balletic rules. When the second wave of feminism rolled in, my mom joined with gusto. She burned her bra at the statue of Joan of Arc on Riverside Drive. More significantly, she went from college freshman to PhD recipient in 10 years, 1970 to 1980, while raising 3 children on her own. Of course, we helped, but we were children. She and I had typical mother-daughter struggles through my teens, but we became closer later on. In 1991, I was living in Mexico and landed in the hospital with a bad case of hepatitis A. When it became clear my recovery would not be swift, she flew down to San Cristobal de las Casas and stayed with me in my room. During the day, she would go out to shop for herself and for the few things that I was able to eat and keep down. She didn't know any Spanish, so she would speak Italian combined with some sign language, and she managed pretty well. Both of my parents had a gift for languages, and I'm grateful I inherited that from them. What I forgot to write down was that she was my first massage teacher. She had an incredible knowledge of anatomy and knew good massage when she felt it, and she taught me how to give her a back massage and foot massage that was good. And it was not until the 90s that I finally went to massage school, and I've now been a massage therapist for 26 plus years, and that's really thanks to my mom. When I left New York City in 2009, I told my mom she was welcome to move with me. She told me she did not want to leave the city ever. A couple of years ago, Sam, Benji, and I spoke with her again, and she reiterated her desire to live alone in her own apartment near the friends she knew and loved. Over the last year, we visited frequently, arranging for an aide to stop in a few days a week. While her memory and cognitive function declined noticeably, I am grateful she always recognized us, and she remained her strong, independent self right up to the end. That's what I wanted to say about my mom. I miss her, and I also feel very happy that she was released from whatever pain she had at the end. It was very hard at the end, and I am very glad she was able to let go. Thanks, everyone, for being here.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you. And Ima Zola? Is that?
Hi, I'm Liz Mazzola. I taught with Barbara at City College for about 15 years just before her retirement. I'm now the chair of the department. I wonder what she would think of that, but I want to share the condolences of all my colleagues who, all of us are in Barbara's debt. I've been rereading some of Barbara's books over the last few weeks, and I'm reminded once more that she pretty much knew nearly everything about everything. She had a great eye, a great ear, a strong mathematical bent, a gift for talking about paintings and history and other critics, always generously and carefully. Barbara often wrote about Milton. Benji mentioned that too. And in another one of Milton's poems called Lycidas, the death of a young shepherd is mourned by his fellow shepherds who console themselves finally with the knowledge that his spirit lives on, that he will stay with them as the genius of the shore, a guiding spirit who watches over all those who wander in that perilous flood. So I take my cue from their example and imagine Barbara as the genius of City College's Knack building. Her example as a teacher and a critic and a writer and a scholar will guide all of us who wander up and down Convent Avenue. And I think all of us are going to do a better job seeing more, knowing more, feeling more deeply because we have this wonderful chance to work with her. So thank you for doing this, and thank you for letting me hear so many other things about Barbara.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not sure who goes next. Is it
I think
Andrea?
it's Caius, I think. Caius? I'm not sure that your screen name is Caius.
Hi, it's Harry Kieshian. I'm sorry, that name doesn't look too clear there. I just wanted to say that I can boast of being one of Barbara's publishers. I was director of Fairleigh Dickinson University Press when Noble Numbers was published, and it was an unusual book, and it was an original book, and I'm very glad we published it because, you know, to come up with something that's unusual and out of the normal pattern is a good thing for a publisher to do. So I thank her for letting us publish it. I just wanted to read one section that I love from the ballet book. It's when she was getting her doctorate and Jerome Robbins was also getting an honorary degree. After I was hooded, I walked over to the raised section and stood right in front of him. Nothing. In a stage whisper, "Jerry, it's me, it's Milberg." He jumps up from the seat, recognizes me in my robe and medieval apothecary hat. "Milberg," he yells, "what are you doing here?" We clinch. I go back to join my children. I think that's a beautiful moment. I love that.
That's right. She always referred to him as Jerry, although the world knows him as Jerome Robbins. And it was an amazing coincidence that he was getting an honorary degree from City College at the same time that she was getting her PhD. I think Pat Lawrence is the next one who'd like to say something.
Yes, thank you for inviting me to the celebration of Barbara. I was a colleague of Barbara's at City College of New York from the time she entered in 1980. And so I knew her in her third incarnation, as it were. And she entered, of course, with the aura of the dance behind her. And I always marveled at the way that she transformed the energy of the dance into her study and love of literature, and of course, her eventually writing many books about various authors, including Wallace Stevens. And I would just relate that sometimes I would pass by her office in NAC, the North Academic Complex at City, and I would hear Barbara and another colleague, Betty Rizzo, and Mary Jackson reading Shakespeare and Milton to one another as evidence of her daily involvement, with her love of words and her love of literature. Also, I heard from my colleague, Dan Leary, that Barbara was a wonderful actor in some Shavian productions that he and another colleague, Barbara, participated in. And so it was more evidence of her inventiveness as an actor and performer. And also, he said that she was so much fun in those productions that they had of Shaw's plays, and that she participated in for years. I also want to add that given what's going on in our country right now, that Barbara, during her years at City College, was very dedicated not only to her honors students, and she ran the honors program as I did for a while, but also to the underskilled students. When I was director of basic writing, I was always impressed with Barbara's commitment to her students, how hard she worked with the students who were motivated to get ahead. And given all that we hear about social and racial injustice, I think that City College was on the front lines, and Barbara was on the front lines too, in addressing those injustices through education. Last, I'd like to say that she spoke to me when she was writing the book about mathematics, the noble numbers, subtle words, the art of mathematics, and the science of storytelling. And she related to me the great pleasure she had in her conversation with Benji, her talented mathematical son. And I think that the coming together with him intellectually of that book gave her great pleasure. And it was another example of her kind of intellectual jetée into another field. We'll miss her, and I send you all my sympathy.
Thank you. I think another indication of her dedication to her students is that she was planning to retire, if I have this right, after the 2001-2002 academic year. but at another time of national crisis, she decided to stay on for another couple of years before retiring.
Yes, I remember that.
And I think the next person who asked to talk was Andrea. I assume it's Andrea, not Jeff.
Alex, you're muted.
Are we still muted or did we just unmute?
We can hear you now.
Okay. I just wanted to say a few words. I had a memory, thinking back on her life. Benji, I had a memory of a conversation we must have had 20 years ago when I had only one child and she then very young. There was some point at which we were talking and I realized that you described yourself as not worrying about the future. You said, why worry? If it happens later and it's bad, then you can deal with it. But why waste mental energy thinking about things that are bad that haven't happened but could? It just takes brain space you don't need to allocate that way. And I said, how do you do that? And why does that come naturally to you? Because it is not, shall we say, a talent that comes immediately to me. And now my children are laughing at me. But you said it was my mom that taught me. Here is why I think this is true of me. She said, I never say that's dangerous. I only say, don't touch that, it's hot. In other words, she gave information. She never just passed on fear without the way to deal with the situation in a logical way. She was always giving me a way to move forward, knowing what I needed to know, but not making me any more fearful than the situation required. And I thought that was just wonderful. So that's all I wanted to share. I have been impressed by her ever since. Not just in that conversation. She was very gracious to me too, but I just thought that was a stunning way of approaching parenting. And I've tried to keep it in mind.
Thank you. I think it's much more eloquent in your retelling than it was when I originally said it.
I can't remember if I've gussied it up at all, but it really made an impression on me. As did her willingness to. I also have to credit her with giving you emergency waltz lessons.
So I think I was clever enough to let her lead, and the results were pretty good.
Yes. Yes.
I see this in chat. I don't know if you want to say this yourself or if I should just read it. It's only identified as being from iPhone. Kelly King is with you.
Yes,
Kelly like?
yes, I'm here.
So would you like to say this yourself?
Oh, I was just, Brooks Jackson is a very good friend of mine, and he danced with Barbara at Ballet Society in New York City Ballet. And when Brooks turned 90 6 years ago, I found Barbara through her book, I believe, and she had written some phrases about Brooks and the other guys in the company. Anyway, Barbara couldn't make it to the birthday party celebration, but every time I bring Brooks up to New York, we'd always get together with Barbara. We'd go over to the restaurant that she liked so much.
Sarah Beth's.
Sarah Beth's, that's it. Yes, we went there many times with her. So it was great to see her and get to know her. And she and Brooks went down memory lane about Balanchine and Jerome Robbins and everybody in the company. And she had kept in contact with some of the other ballerinas that Brooks was with as well. So it was great hearing her stories, and always so up and lively. We always had a great time with her. She's a beautiful lady. And Brooks he's in Florida, so he can't be on Zoom with you. love to say a few words. In the event, Benji, we met you one time at Barbara's house. I don't know if you remember that or not, but she's going to be missed, and I'm loving all the great stories that everyone's telling. So thank you very much for inviting us.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that certainly means we've heard representatives from all three of her careers. I'm still waiting to hear if there was a fourth that I'm not aware of. I think my wife Ginda would like to say something next.
Yeah. Am I speaking? I guess, Barbara was a wonderful human being, a wonderful mother-in-law. She always made me feel so welcome. She was so warm. She gave such wonderful massages. But the thing that I really want to share is that she was a really good role model for me in how to be assertive. Barbara was very good at understanding that sometimes you don't get what you need if you don't push. And sometimes you don't get what you deserve if you don't push. And she would stand up to sort of people in authority, especially men. I remember her talking about, some sort of fighting with some doctor who was only interested in her ear and not in her as a human being. But she said, "I'm a doctor too," because she was a PhD. I remember she fought hard to get tenure because she was a woman. And I think that she believed, probably rightly, that she was being passed over because she was a woman. And she brought her case to them, and she convinced them that they were in error and that they should give her tenure. She was a big advocate of unions and of people banding together to get what was right. And she had a very strong sense of social justice and was very good at executing. And I just wanted to share that she was actually very strong, yet always polite, pleasant, but a very strong and assertive woman who tried to make the world a better place.
And you're absolutely right, Ginda. She did. Thank you.
I just want to add something to the quest for tenure and such. As we were sorting through what was left in her apartment, I went through a lot of her old papers, and she had stacks of letters with always the most recent one on top. And I remember going through a pile saying, "Congratulations, you've been given tenure. We have received your request to reconsider our decision. I'm very sorry to tell you that after going through the process, we've decided you're not going to go." And there were about 6 of these.
How do we?
And there was one of that for tenure. There was one of that for being promoted to associate professor. There was one of another set for going from adjunct to full-time faculty. Something odd is happening to the display.
Something odd is happening.
Someone has started sharing their screen.
Sharing her screen.
It's Lucy. Sorry, Lucy.
Lucy, are you intending to share your screen?
To her.
I think it's accidental.
I can. Guys, let me try to turn that off.
Lucy Rosenthal, please stop screen sharing. I know you didn't do it on purpose.
Woohoo!
And then Esther Weiner tried to say something in the chat a couple of times, but I don't think ever quite finished. Would you like to say it out loud?
Thank you. I apologize. The chat was not doing what I wanted it to do. I just wanted to say that I'm always reminded of someone you may know who wrote of Cleopatra and also of Barbara Milberg Fisher. Age cannot wither her, nor customs stale her infinite variety. Perhaps you'll recognize the quote. Love you, Barbara. Dia, E.W. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very
Tried
apt.
to chat and I didn't know how to chat right. So I wanted to say a word too, if possible.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
I just wanted to say whenever I went into the city, I always remember stopping by your mother's and sitting at her kitchen table, and she would recite Milton. She just knew it by heart. And then we would walk in the conservatory gardens where she once volunteered. How she found the time, I don't know. And she knew every plant and tree, including the magnolia tree that had been struck by lightning and split in half, which I think Lori talked about, and then regrew. It was even stronger than before. And I will always remember her in the blossoming alleys in the conservatory garden. And I remember when she took me to see the Pirates of Penzance, she liked going to see Gilbert and Sullivan, and she treated people. And I have to read her book on numbers. And my son Dante remembers her taking him to the Museum of Natural History when we went into the city, and he stayed overnight. And he remembers her, and he wants to read her book on noble numbers too, because he's writing a book that has to do with numbers. So noble numbers will continue. She was an incredible writer, an incredible, nurturing, generous, spirited, lovely, beautiful friend. And I will always, she's still there. She's still around. I still think of her. And I will always remember her.
Thank you. I think Alyssa, you would like to say something?
Hi. Yeah, I just had a memory in this train of Barbara telling or helping women to be assertive. And I remember it was shortly after I graduated from college. I was at, and I always have memories of being in the most amazing restaurant that I never would have known of other than Barbara. Like how she kind of always chose these gems and gems of experiences for, I think, anyone she was with. And but she just said, don't say sorry. And women, or young women especially, just cut the word sorry out of your vocabulary. I'm just a crier, so but I just will be forever grateful for the light and the joy that Barbara shared with me throughout my childhood and young adulthood. And I know that I'm gonna always have that supportive presence. And anyway, I'm just a crier, so I'm not gonna say sorry, but I will say thank you, Barbara, and my blessings and best to all of you.
Thank you, Alyssa.
Thank you, Alyssa. Thanks for making me cry.
Thanks, Alyssa.
Sure thing. Sure thing. I really love Barbara, and so grateful for her.
My daughter Alice wrote in the chat that Alice is her reincarnation, which we've said many times. Did you want to say something out loud, Alice, or just write that? Is there anyone else who would like to? Oh, Jeremy. Please go ahead.
Yes. Hi. So I as you remember, Benji, I met your mom when we met in a summer math camp, and I went home and mentioned Barbara Fisher to my parents, and lo and behold, my dad had grown up with her and was friends with her brother David and remembered her. And I think so the amount of coincidence involved was great. And, you know, I certainly got to meet your mom a few times and found her, you know, she was sort of as inspirational to me as everyone else mentioned, just describing her life today. But for my dad, who was in who was also an English professor, think as your mom was transitioning into her third act, she became friends with him, and they, they had some, wonderful interactions regarding literature and the profession. And I know he really appreciated her and both their friendship and just what she was able to do with words and with literature. And I mainly wanted to say that because while he's on today, I didn't know if he would be making these remarks himself. So, but anyway, it's a great loss, and our memories are substantial. So.
Thank you. Yes,
Thanks,
that's
Jeremy.
Thanks, Jeremy.
That is one of the great small world stories of my life. Is there anyone else who would like to say something?
Janelle?
I think I'll share, and then Sam wanted to say a few words.
I did?
Yes, he did. I'm glad to be here with you all and hear all of your stories. Barbara was my mother-in-law. I'm also a crier, so excuse me. And the memories that come to mind, I've been able to stay in the apartment for the last month, and I'm just flooded with memories often of little things. Like how every morning she would have bowls and silverware and everything ready for us on the table for when we woke up in the morning for our breakfast, and have coffee ready. If I go out for a long walk in the park, I come in and I can hear her saying, like, come sit down, tell me what you did, where'd you go, with those bright eyes and the enthusiasm and the happiness to just be able to sit and talk. And then going through her things with everybody and seeing these additional layers to her that I knew were there, but I hadn't been able to fully experience, has really helped me to get to know her in a way that I didn't when she was here. There was a picture in the slideshow of that was kind of hidden behind other pictures, and it was the one of her with her three children at the park, and she was standing behind them, and she was looking kind of petite and a big smile on her face. And that, I knew she was a single mom. I was a single mom for a long time, but that picture really drove it home for me that, like, wow, she did that. Like, she was raising these three children by herself and put herself through school and accomplished so much more. And I'll miss her. I'll miss sitting here with her and watching Rachel Maddow eating ice cream. When she first became ill, she was responsive to a few things, like her children's voices and music. And I swear she was reactive to Rachel Maddow when she heard us watching Rachel in the other room. And I'm just grateful that I had the opportunity to know her and that she was my mother-in-law and that she was surrounded by love by her children at the end, because that's the most any of us can hope for, is that. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, baby. And now
Thanks, Janelle. Love you.
Love you.
Hi, everybody. I'm the kid that came out right. Mom tried 2 times, didn't work out so well. Third time's the charm. She succeeded. That was it. So my mom, you guys think you're criers. Bear with me here. My mom instilled in a lot in me, like the fact that I'm a bleeding heart liberal, that completely comes from her. She raised us to just examine everything and not prejudge people and things. So, you know, she raised me in such a way so that when I learned about things like homophobia and racism in my life, I never understood it. I never understood why people were like that, because my mom didn't raise me like that. And when I was very young, like, 3 years old, 4 years old, she would take me out for walks with the stroller, and she would let me march up every brownstone stairway on our walks, and she would let me talk to people and ring doorbells and just do all kinds of things that most people would be aghast about. And so it made it so that I would be able to be a very gregarious and outgoing person till I met Janelle, and then I just shut down. But she never made me eat any kind of food that I didn't want to eat. And I think as a result of that, I have an incredibly varied palate as an adult. Thank you, Mom. She had a really hard life. Parts of it were super, super hard. And I mention that because it really goes to show what kind of woman she was, in that all these things that she accomplished, raising 3 children, a career in the ballet, a career in academia, pulling it off by herself, it's incredible. It's incredible what she did. Couple more things, I guess, that I thought of. I guess the other thing was she taught me to take no shit, which unfortunately I never let go of that. So thanks, Mom.
You took it to a whole new level, Sam.
Took it to a whole new level. She was fearless too. One time when she came out to California, I gave her a ride on the back of my motorcycle in San Francisco in the rain. It was hair-raising, to be sure, and she never acted scared at all. No matter what I did to scare her, she would not show it. It was
not
amazing.
to your face.
What?
Not to your face.
Oh, not to my face, right. Oh, she was incredible. And I guess the last thing I want to share is that, when I was very young, we locked horns a lot. Okay, my entire life. But when I was young, she said to me, like at one point when I had pissed her off, which happened once or twice maybe, no more than that. She said, you know what? I am going to put the curse on you that my mother put on me. I hope that your kids grow up exactly like you. Now, I was like maybe 8 or 9 years old, but I knew right then to schedule the vasectomy. Because I think I really came out like my mom. And sometimes it's a burden, but most of the times it is who I am. And it got this one to like me. So there it is. So thank you, everybody, for being here. Scene.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Sam. I guess we can wrap up now unless someone else would like to jump in. And shall we try the slideshow again as a way to... Gint is going to try. And stay on as long as you like. Again, if there's anything that you'd like edited out of the recording before we make it available, get in touch with us and we'll do that. And thank you all for coming and saying such wonderful things about our mother.
Thank
you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. I want to mention something real quick. If anybody wants the slideshow, there's something like 92 pictures in it. It will be available. We'll be able to share it across various platforms. So just contact us if you want to have a copy of that, or we might load it up to YouTube or something. I don't know.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for letting me be here.
Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for putting this all together. This was
Janelle, can
extraordinary.
you play the slideshow, please? I'm sorry.
Yeah, she's doing it.
Thank you guys for putting this all together.
Thank you.
Really.
Very welcome.
It was wonderful to do it.
Oh, that's it.
Your mom had a really big heart, and she was unfailingly sweet to me, and I will miss her greatly.
Thank you from Houston. Thanks for inviting us.
Thank you so much for making this possible. This was really special. What? Okay.
Where was Annie?
Can you hear me, everybody?
Yes.
I'm Gigi's granddaughter, and I just wanted to say that I never met Sam's mom, and I'm so sorry, Sam, that she passed. And I just seen all those pictures, and I just wanna you guys to know that I always wanted to meet her, and she looks like an amazing person. How you guys talk about her, and I just bless on her, and I'm happy that she's with Jesus now.
Thank you, Kyla. That was very sweet.
Thank you, Kyla. I hate you.
No, he doesn't. Stop it.
Kayla, I wanted to tell you, you did meet her.
Oh, yes. Great.
That's right.
When you were 1.
Kyla
One?
threw flower petals at our
Kyla,
wedding.
sorry. I always do that.
Kyla was the flower girl at our wedding, but she was like 1.5 years old, so she might not remember.
I just wanted you to know that you did meet her.
Yes. She always asks about you, Kyla.
And I'm sorry I get your name wrong.
It's okay.
Okay.
That's the 70th birthday.
You came flying in for that one, Sam.
What was that, Lori?
You came flying in for that birthday, surprise birthday.
Yep. That was cool.
I remember that.
That's a cute picture.
Love that picture.
Is that the conservatory garden?
Yeah.
Alex, you look amazing there. What's that?
Then we had another surprise dinner for her on her 80th birthday. You'd figure she would notice the pattern by then and not be surprised, but
We almost killed her that day.
I don't remember
Oh,
that.
look, it's her cutest baby.
Her practice baby.
Alex, what year did you turn 80?
Practice.
What, Karen?
What year did she turn 80?
8 years ago.
2011.
2011, yep.
2011.
And she was 21 in that picture of her kitty, and her kitty lasted 21 years. Isn't that weird?
I met that kitty when I was a tiny little person.
I knew that kitty for a big part of my childhood, till I was 11.
I knew Spite and Dival.
Ha, nice. Spite and
Oh
Dival.
yeah, Spite and Dival. She almost took Sam's eye out.
I like the copycat who used to do her exercises with her. I don't remember his name.
That was Patrick?
Yes, Patrick. That's right. He was.
Oh, Patrick, yeah. He also had a little blue bow that, and starting when he was hitting, and by the time he was as huge as his legs were falling out the sides.
Alex, is that you?
No,
That's Laurie's daughter.
that's what I thought. I thought that was Alyssa. And that's Alice. And that's the goddess.
She's beautiful, so photogenic.
And did everyone know she always cut her own hair? She would never let anyone touch it.
I did not know that.
No, I didn't know that.
Amazing. She had a good haircut.
Well,
I did
there
not
was
know that either.
Enzo de Perugia in the 60s, and after that, basically her.
Classic. Love that picture. That's in the 72nd Street, that walkway with the trees in Central Park.
Oh, yeah.
From Belvedere Castle.
This is probably Maine, right?
Or
Fire Island.
Fire Island.
Ah. The best kid again.
Kid again.
I love this picture.
They were okay looking, weren't they?
Yeah.
Elizabeth Taylor and Marcello Mastroianni.
I remember with neck and just say, relax, relax. And then all of a sudden, wham, and crack everything right back into line.
What a life.
Yeah, she was an unlicensed chiropractor. I made her stop doing that.
She was really good, though.
She really
That's
was.
her dad.
So these are not in random order.
Dramatic much?
Beautiful.
Mad Men.
Yes.
Such a rake.
You know, it seems to me that show was really about our parents, wasn't it?
Yeah. Oh, there's Brooks. We heard from Brooks's friend earlier.
Wow.
The Grecian.
Oh my goodness.
Mr. B.
What's that line about somebody writing Vespa and someone simonizing Bizet? That was from her Balanchi's company book.
I couldn't understand you, Lori.
Oh, yeah, I guess my sound is problematic again. There was that little poem she stuck in. Is that any better?
Mm.
No.
All right, never mind. I'll chat.
Okay.
It's like time traveling watching these pictures. I feel like we're moving through the timeline. It's so cool.
Yeah.
The windows that used to be there.
Aw. She could have been a model too. If she could have had a fifth career as a model if she wanted to.
Oh yeah.
Easy.
It was so much more diagonal back then.
She's very Audrey Hepburnish.
Where is Annie?
Did I miss the fourth?
Oh, nice picture. Wow.
That was what, 98, I think? The 50th anniversary?
Could be. I guess she was still a teenager when Ballet Society turned into New York City Ballet.
I think she was 16 at that point.
Ballet Society was 1946.
Right, and she was 15. So when it turned to New York City Ballet, I think she was 16.
Right. Maybe it's repeating now, maybe. Well, thank you for inviting me, everybody. Yes. I really enjoyed being here. It was great.
Thanks, Lisa.
I'm Alex's friends, and I met Barbara a couple of times. I wish I knew her better. Wish I knew her better. It was wonderful to be here, though.
Thanks for coming.
Yes, you can have. Thank you so much for inviting me. We'll talk soon. Love you. Bye-bye.
Bye. I'm going to go to goodbye, everybody.
Bye, Alex.
And I'm going to as well.
Bye,
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye, Mindy. Thanks for coming.
Bye, Alex. Thank you very much for including me. It was really a learning experience about how strong she was.
Oh, yeah.
Really strong.
Thanks, Mindy.
Thank you.
Thanks for everything, Mindy.
Take care of everybody.
Thank you.
Too. Bye.
Thank you. Bye, Benji. Bye, Sam.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Was that Kathleen?
Yes.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Thanks for
Bye-bye.
this. Bye.
Oh, there's a bunch of pictures missing.
Thank you for including me, Benji. It was a privilege to hear these stories.
Thank you, James.
Bye.
Bye.
Benji, may you be comforted among the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem.
Thank you all for including me. It really has been a beautiful experience hearing all the stories. And I'll be thinking about you all. Bye.
Bye, Karen.
You can. Hansel and Gretel meet the witch.